There's another thread to add to our weaving, and it's a story of a long time ago in the far-off land of Afghanistan. And there in that place lived a man called Akbar Khan. Now, Akbar Khan bred horses. He was a very famous horse breeder. His fillies and colts were sought after by many people in many places, and his mares were sought after by emirs and sultans and kings. But one night, Akbar Khan, after sleeping the peaceful sleep of someone who has no fear, woke up to find that 3 of his prized mares had been stolen. So immediately he took his magnificent black stallion, which was loved more than even his own sons and could be ridden by no one but him, saddled up this magnificent being and set out to find his mares. Now he left his stud in the care of the old groom who wished him Godspeed, and Akbar Khan rode at great pace to find these thieves. But it seems that the thieves were riding at quite a speed, because every town he came to, it seemed that they'd just been there and left. And in each place it was confirmed that 2 men riding horses and leading 3 mares had come through that town. But Akbar Khan recognized and realized that the route that they were taking was the route to that place, that town, that held horse sales. So Akbar Khan knew in which direction the thieves were going. But it seemed that they always eluded him, always being paces ahead of him, until finally he arrived at that town that was the place where the horse sales took place. Now Akbar Khan knew without a doubt that this was the place where the horse thieves had bought his mares. But where were they? So he tethered his great black stallion to a tree, knowing that no one would dare to come, because its flashing hooves and its gnashing teeth would frighten off anyone who came to try to steal him. So Akbar Khan went into town and went to a tea shop and sat down and drank some green tea, with the knowing that someone he knew would come by, because after all, horse traders, and this was a horse town, would know of him. So sure enough, when he was sipping his 3rd cup of green tea, an acquaintance came by and sat down at his table, and they got talking, and Akbar Khan asked him, do you know of someone who came? And this man said, yes, in fact it has been seen that there were 2 men riding rather inferior horses, leading 3 very high quality mares into town, but where they are, no one has any idea. So they thought to themselves, maybe they'll go around to the various stables that were holding the horses that were going to be for sale. But they both knew that it was likely that these thieves would put the horses somewhere that could not be easily found. So Akbar Khan had an idea. he said, let me go back to my stallion. So he and his acquaintance went back to where the great black stallion was tethered. And Akbar Khan went over and whispered in his stallion's ear. And this was out of the earshot of this other fellow, who of course was not meant to hear what was being said to this great beast. And Akbar Khan whispered, and the response from this beautiful creature was to shake its head and neigh. So with that, Akbar Khan got on to the great being and rode off into town, followed by his acquaintance. But of course, the great stallion, being the creature that he was, very quickly outpaced the man who was following. So very easily, as they came into town, the great stallion started to trot rather rapidly, and very quickly came to a place, a wooded fence, and he started at first to paw with his right hoof, and then he pawed with his left hoof, and then he neighed loudly. So Akbar Khan knew that this was the place where his mares were to be found. And of course, when he heard the mares neighing in response, he knew that the place had been pinpointed. So turning the great stallion around, he gave it the order to lift its great hooves, and so it did. And with its great hooves, it very easily knocked down the wooden fence that was between him and his mares. So Akbar Khan entered the area in which the mares were held, and alighted and went about the task that untethering them from the hooks that they had been tied to. But just then 2 men ran out of the building nearby. But when they saw the flashing hooves and the waving mane and the gnashing teeth with froth coming out of the mouth of the great stallion, they very, very quickly ran away and were not to be seen again, even though the townspeople looked for them. But by this time, his acquaintance, Akbar Khan's acquaintance, and the townspeople had gathered around to congratulate him on finding his mares, and all of them wanting to give him hospitality. But being horse lovers as they were, they tried to find the thieves who had very rapidly left town. After being feted by the townspeople, Akbar Khan climbed on his magnificent stallion, and leading his 3 prized mares, went back to the stud, where his life continued peacefully from there on, without any further happenings that had took him on this great adventure. So the question that arises out of this story, as another thread that we're weaving into something, knowing that every element in every story is an aspect of our self, what does this magnificent black stallion represent for us in our being, in our psyche, And what name would you give it? What does this great black stallion represent in us? And what name would you give it? Flashing hooves, magnificent mane, waving tail, stature, presence, bringing awe and recognition. What is it about you? What is this stallion to us?
It's our